वासुदेवाय ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत् नष्टप्रायेषु अभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवतसेवया भगवति उत्तम श्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी. So continuing with the discussion on Srimad Bhagavad Gita, 6th chapter, entitled Dhyana Yoga. And I believe we did up till verse 19, if I'm not wrong. So we'll start from text 20 onwards. Yatro parmate chittam nirudham yoga sevaya yatra chaivatmanatmanam pasyanatmani tushyati Sukhamatyantikam yatad buddhigrayam atindriyam veti yatra na chaivayam sthitah chalati tattvataha yam labdva cha param labham anyate nadikam tataha yasmin sthito na dukkhena guruna api vichalyate tam vidyad dukh samyoga viyogam yogya sangitam. Translation. In the stage of perfection called trance or samadhi, one's mind is completely restrained from material mental activities by practice of yoga. This perfection is characterized by one's ability to see the self by the pure mind and to relish and rejoice in the self. In that joyous state, one is situated in boundless transcendental happiness realized through transcendental senses. So, in that joyous state, one is situated in boundless transcendental happiness, realized through transcendental senses. Established thus, one never departs from the truth, and upon gaining this, he thinks there is no greater gain. Being situated in such a position, one is never shaken, even in the midst of greatest calamity. This indeed is actual freedom from all miseries arising from material contact. So, what happens by practice of yoga and by coming to the stage of samadhi, by becoming more and more spiritual? By practice of yoga, one becomes gradually detached from material concepts. This is the primary characteristic of the yoga principle. And after this, one becomes situated in trance or samadhi, which means that the yogi realizes the supersoul through transcendental mind and intelligence, without any of the misgivings of identifying the self with the superself. So, yogi realizes the supersoul through transcendental mind and intelligence. But to come to that stage of transcendental mind and intelligence, one has to go through so many steps. So, the final step is samadhi. But before that, the yogi has to go through so many steps, right? I studied pranayam, pratyahar, no, yam, niyam, asan, then pranayam, pratyahar, dharan, dhyan, samadhi. So dharan, dhyan, up to the stage of dhyan. So then slowly, slowly he becomes, his mind and intelligence becomes spiritual. So without any of the misgivings of identifying the self with the super self, because the super self or the super soul or Paramatma, he cannot have material body. He does not have material body. Only we do. And the yogi, while coming to that stage, he understands that I had a material body, I had a material mind, I had a material intelligence, and now I am getting spiritualized and realizing the super soul. So that means the super soul is, I am never a super soul, I am never Paramatma, I am never God. So without any of the misgivings. Yoga practice is more or less based on the principles of the Patanjali system. Some unauthorized commentators try to identify the individual soul with the supersoul, and the monists think this to be liberation. But they do not understand the real purpose of the Patanjali system of yoga. There is an acceptance of transcendental pleasure in the Patanjali system, but the monists do not accept this transcendental pleasure out of fear of jeopardizing the theory of oneness. So monist, when Prabhupada says monist means those who think that we are one with the God. And their aim is liberation. Liberation means merging into Brahmjyoti. But they do not understand. There is an acceptance of transcendental pleasure in the Patanjali system. But why that transcendental pleasure is there and why it jeopardizes the theory of oneness? See, the monists or Mayavadis, or those who believe that we all are one and we are going to merge in one. So they don't believe in this transcendental happiness while performing yoga. They think, they understand, their philosophy is that we are one with the Supreme. We are God. We are Brahman. They say uh, that so aham. So aham is the one word. Or aham brahmasmi. It means so aham means I am that. So for them, this pleasure, out of fear of jeopardizing the theory of oneness, means that we are not going to get some superior pleasure when we merge in Brahm Jyoti, because then there is no me left in there. There is nothing. Once we emerge, we lose our individuality, so there is no question of pleasure over there. The duality of knowledge and knower is not accepted by the non-dualist. But in the words transcendental pleasure, in this verse, transcendental pleasure realized through transcendental senses is accepted. And this is corroborated by Patanjali Muni. So they believe that once we merge, we lose our identity and there is no question of having pleasure then. Because I'm not there, we are lost, we're gone, we're dead, we're finished. So, but the this is not exception non-dualist. Non-dualist or monist, same thing. But the dualist, the Vaishnava philosophy is different. They say we experience transcendental pleasure through our transcendental senses once we come to the level of samadhi or the perfection of yoga. This chit shakti or internal potency, okay, the great sages declare in this Yoga Sutra that there is a chit shakti. This chit shakti or internal potency is transcendental. Purusharth means material religiosity, economic development, sense gratification, and to attempt to become one with the Supreme. This oneness with the Supreme is called Kaivalyam by the monist. So this oneness, when we say the moksha, dharma, artha, kam, and moksha. So they say moksha means Kaivalyam. Kaivalyam means merging in the Brahmjyoti. But according to Patanjali, now why Prabhupada is again and again coming back to Patanjali? Because Patanjali is the one who's a father of this yoga system, Hatha yoga system, Dhyana yoga system. This Kaivalyam is an internal or transcendental potency by which the living entity becomes aware of his constitutional position. So, according to Patanjali, the Kaivalyam, the moksha that monist or Mayavadis think moksha means merging into the Brahmjyoti. That is Kaivalyam. But here the Kaivalyam actually means by which it's a sort of internal potency. Internal potency means spiritual energy of Krishna, by which the living entity becomes aware of his constitutional position. Means I'm a servant of Krishna. In the words of Lord Chaitanya, this state of affairs is called Cheto Darpana Marjana, or clearance of the impure mirror of the mind. This clearance is actually liberation, or Bhav Mahandavagni Nirvapana. The theory of Nirvana, also plate memory, corresponds with this principle. In the Bhagavatam, this is called Sarupena Vyavasthiti. So this is where Mayavadis and Vaishnava philosophy they differentiate. This is a big difference between the two. Mayavadi philosophy, they believe that we all merge in the Supreme, merge in the Brahm Jyoti, and then we lose identity, and there is no question of any finding any happiness there. But according to Vaishnava philosophy, soul never loses the individuality. Even in Bhagavad Gita, it is mentioned that. So soul finds ultimate happiness through the transcendental senses in the spiritual world. According to Vaishnava philosophy, after nirvana or material cessation, there is a manifestation of spiritual activities or devotional service to the Lord, known as Krishna consciousness. So, after we get liberated, after the material life is over, material cessation, material stopping, there is a manifestation of spiritual activities. So, activities are always there, whether in the material world or spiritual. But now since we're talking about this yoga means taking us to spiritual path, spiritual goal. So then the spiritual activities start, or which are called devotional service to the Lord. In the words of Bhagavatam, Swarupen Vyavastiti, that this is the real life of the living entity. Maya or illusion is a condition of spiritual life contaminated by material infection. Just like Prabhupada once said in one of the lecture that when a person is sick, suppose somebody falls sick, he has high fever. So in that high fever, he cannot even eat properly. He cannot drink properly. He cannot do anything properly. So even though he is eating, but he is not getting the taste of that eating. So all of the four activities, eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, we cannot perform properly if we are sick, if we are running a high fever. So similarly, a person in the material universe, in the material life, although he is spiritual, but because he is in the material life, he is kind of sick. He has lots of material fever. And because of that, although he is eating, but he cannot taste properly. He will not enjoy the eating part. Eating, sleeping, mating, or defending. He cannot enjoy because he is not healthy. And once we become healthy, the eating will give lots of pleasure. Sleeping will give pleasure also. Mating, defending, everything give lots of pleasure. Unlimited pleasure. So, Maya or illusion is a condition of spiritual life contaminated by material infection. Liberation from this material infection does not mean destruction of the original eternal position of the living entity. Patanjali also accepts this by the word Kavalyam Swarup Pratishtha Va Chitti Shaktiriti. This Chitta Shakti or transcendental pleasure is real life. So that is a real life, that is a healthy life. Even in this material world, we try to go after so many things, basically for eating or sleeping or mating or defending. We are getting some pleasure out of it. Just like a sick man, he gets some pleasure. He doesn't get the whole pleasure, but he finds some happiness. So how, just imagine the kind of pleasure a soul will achieve or will experience once he goes back to the spiritual world. Even in the material world, if he finds some pleasure in this, first of all, this is a place of misery where birth, death, old age, and disease are there. There is no birth, death, old age, and disease for the spirit soul. It's all related to the body. So, so this, even while we are in the material world suffering from all these anxieties and problems, still we are trying to find pleasure. Or we are still getting some pleasure, otherwise we won't stick around over here. Can we imagine the real pleasure a spirit soul will achieve when he goes back to the spiritual world? Where there is no birth, there is no death, there is no old age, no disease, no adibhautik, adhyatmik, adidhavik klesha. And these are the negative things and positive things when he will be with Krishna or Krishna's servants. We can't even imagine the kind of pleasure soul will achieve over there. This natural transcendental pleasure is the ultimate goal of yoga and is easily achieved by execution of devotional service or bhakti yoga. In the yoga system, as described in this chapter, there are two kinds of samadhi called sampragyat samadhi and asampragyat samadhi. When one becomes situated in the transcendental position by various philosophical researchers, he is said to have achieved sampragyat samadhi. So he has gained lots of knowledge. In the asampragyat samadhi, there is no longer any connection with the mundane pleasure, for then one is then transcendental to all sorts of happiness derived from the senses. Transcendental to all sorts of happiness derived from the senses. Even the mind or intelligence, they are material senses, but they are still considered senses. Not intelligence, but the mind. So not getting achieving any pleasure out of material senses. When the yogi is once situated in that transcendental position, he is never shaken from it. Unless the yogi is able to reach this position, he is unsuccessful. Therefore, today's so called yoga practice, which involves various sense pleasures, is contradictory. A yogi indulging in sex and intoxication is a mockery. So, for a yogi, this is all prohibited. Even those yogis who are attracted by the siddhis, perfections in the process of yoga, are not perfectly situated. If yogis are attracted by the byproducts of yoga, then they cannot attain the stage of perfection, as is stated in this verse. Persons, therefore, indulging in the makeshift practice of gymnastic feats of siddhi should know that the aim of yoga is lost in that way. So, that is not the aim of yoga. So, these are some byproducts. If somebody gets some siddhis, there are 8 siddhis, so either of them or all eight of them, a yogi can achieve to a certain degree, but that's not the goal of yoga. So if he becomes happy by achieving that, he should be considered he's not a proper yogi. The best practice of yoga in this age is Krishna consciousness, which is not baffling. A Krishna conscious person is so happy in this occupation that he does not aspire after any other happiness. The many impediments, especially in the age of hypocrisy, to practice Hatha Yoga, Dhyana Yoga, Jnana Yoga. But there is no such problem in executing Karma Yoga or Bhakti Yoga. So, other processes, there are too many impediments. I mean, there are too many restrictions one has to overcome. But in Bhakti Yoga, there is no such problem. It's very easy and very sublime. As long as a material body exists, one has to meet the demands of the body, namely eating, sleeping, defending, and mating. But a person who is in pure bhakti yoga or in Krishna consciousness does not arouse the senses while meeting the demands of the body. So even in bhakti, a person has to work, he has to eat, he has to sleep, he has to defend, he has to mate. But he does not arouse the senses, means he is not looking for any sense gratification when he is performing these activities, 4 activities. Basically, he's just doing as a part of his duty. Rather, he accepts the bare necessities of life, making the best use of a bad bargain, and enjoys transcendental happiness in Krishna consciousness. He is callous towards incidental occurrences such as accidents, disease, scarcity, and even the death of a most dear relative, but he is always alert to execute his duties in Krishna consciousness or Bhakti Yoga. Accidents never deviate him from his duty. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita, Agama Paino Anityasta Stitikshasva Bharat. He endures all such incidental occurrences because he knows that they come and go and do not affect his duties. In this way, he achieves the highest perfection in yoga practice. So, come to the platform of yoga practice, uh, to a highest stage, it is possible after long periods of practice. And then once he achieves that stage, he does not, he doesn't even care for material sense gratification anymore. So means we have a long way to go. Simple as that. Text 24. Sanishchena yoktavyo yogo anirvana chetasa sankalpa prabhavan kamans tyaktva sarvana sheshatah mansavendriya gramam viniyamya samantatah. One should engage oneself in the practice of yoga with determination and faith and not be deviated from the path. One should abandon, without exception, all material desires born of mental speculation and thus control all the senses on all sides by the mind. So, yoga system is not easy. That means this dhyana yoga or hatha yoga. The yoga practitioner should be determined and should patiently prosecute the practice without deviation. One should be sure of success at the end and pursue this course with great perseverance, not becoming discouraged if there is any delay in the attainment of success. Success is sure for the rigid practitioner. Just like one day, Mataji was asking, she thinks she's not making any progress after spending so much of time in this. And she was getting discouraged. But Rupa Goswami, what does he say? Utsaha nishya dharya tattat karma pravartanat sanga tyaga sato vrite shadbhir bhaktir prasiddhite. One can execute the process of bhakti yoga successfully with full-hearted enthusiasm, perseverance, and determination by following the prescribed rules in the association of devotees and by engaging completely in the activities of goodness. So these six injunctions are there to make us make progress on the path of bhakti or yoga. So utsahat, nishyad, dharyat, enthusiasm, perseverance, and patience and determination is very much required. Then one can make progress. And of course, following the prescribed duties in the association of devotees and engage completely in the activities of goodness. So Prabhupada now gives the example of determination. As for determination, one should follow the example of the sparrow who lost her eggs in the waves of an ocean. A sparrow laid her eggs on the shore of the ocean, but the big ocean carried away the eggs on its waves. The sparrow became very upset and asked the ocean to return her eggs. The ocean did not even consider her appeal. So the sparrow decided to dry up the ocean. Sparrow said, "If you don't return my eggs, I'll dry you up." And the ocean was laughing. "You little sparrow, how do you know how much water I hold? How are you going to dry me up?" So she began to pick out the water in her small beak, and everyone laughed at her for her impossible determination. The news of her activity spread, and at last Garuda, the gigantic bird carrier of Lord Vishnu, heard it. He became compassionate towards his small sister bird, and so he came to see the sparrow. So Garudaji, he heard what is going on, and he came to see little sparrow. And she was still taking few drops of water in her beak and taking that, dropping the water somewhere else on the land. So Garudaji came. Garuda was very pleased by the determination of the small sparrow and promised to help. Thus Garuda at once asked the ocean to return her eggs, lest he feels himself take up the work of the sparrow. So Garudaji told the ocean, now you better give her eggs back or I will dry you up. So the ocean knew the power of Garuda. So he returned the eggs. The ocean was frightened at this and returned the eggs. Thus the sparrow became happy by the grace of Garuda. So what's the meaning? Why this story over here? Similarly, the practice of yoga, especially bhakti yoga in Krishna consciousness, may appear to be very difficult job. But if anyone follows the principles with great determination, the Lord will surely help. For God helps those who help themselves. So yes, yoga practice, it takes long time. Even bhakti yoga takes very long time. Many times it will feel like, oh, I'm not making progress at all. What is this we all are doing? And so many things might crop up in the mind, because mind is very tricky, very, very tricky. Like in previous one verse we read, no, if the mind is in control, it's the best of the friends, and the mind which is not in control is the worst of the enemies. So mind always wants to take us down, because the gravity pulls everything down. So mind also wants to take us down. Oh, this is not good. Don't do this. Don't go to temple. Don't go for the class. Don't do this. Don't do the. What is the use? What are you going to attain? So many things. Mind will play games with us. But better to control the mind by intelligence. So intelligence should tell the mind, no, we have to go to the class because it's good for us. We have to chant. We have to read Prabhupada's books or other activities, whatever Prabhupada has given. So then we can make progress. It's all actually the game of mind. And mind plays very tricky games. Just like, oh, today is Saturday. Why get up so early and attend the class? You can listen to the recording. There is no problem. These are all games of the mind. So, but one who is determined, who is fixed, he will go ahead with his plans because he lets the intelligence rule over the mind. Text 25. Shaner Shaner Uparam Shaner Uparameda Dwadhya Dhriti Grihitaya Atman Sanstam Mana Kritva Na Kinchid Api Chintayet. Gradually, step by step, one should become situated in trance by means of intelligence sustained by full conviction, and thus the mind should be fixed on the self alone and should think of nothing else. So one should become situated in trance by means of intelligence, sustained by full conviction. So intelligence has to be very sharp, and that's why it is said like in some place, intelligence should be as sharp as a knife. And whenever the demands of mind come, the intelligence should cut it up. By proper conviction and intelligence, one should gradually cease sense activities. This is called pratyahar. The mind being mind being controlled by conviction, meditation, and cessation from the senses, should be situated in trance or samadhi. At that time, there is no longer any danger of becoming engaged in the material conception of life. In other words, although one is involved in matter, as long as the material body exists, one should not think about sense gratification. So one should not even think about sense gratification. Although the sense, as much as progress we are making, the senses will get satisfied, and those will be the spiritual senses which get satisfied because they get the spiritual nourishment. One should think of no pleasure aside from the pleasure of the Supreme Self. This state is easily attained by directly practicing Krishna consciousness. So even in the chapter of yoga, dhyana yoga, Prabhupada is again and again bringing the point of bhakti. the point of Krishna consciousness. Because there is no chapter without actual, the import of words is according to Prabhupada's translations. Text 26. Yato yato nischalati manaschanchalamastheram tatastato niyamatad atmanye vasham nayet. From wherever the mind wanders due to its flickering and unsteady nature, one must certainly withdraw it and bring it back under the control of the self. So that is only possible if the intelligence is very sharp. The nature of the mind is flickering and unsteady. But a self-realized yogi has to control the mind. The mind should not control him. But most of the time, generally it is mind that controls everybody. Why? Because the mind, nature of the mind is flickering and unsteady. One who controls the mind and therefore the senses as well is called Goswami or Swami. And one who is controlled by the mind is called Godas or the servant of the senses. A Goswami knows the standard of sense happiness. In transcendental sense happiness, the senses are engaged in the service of Rishikesha or the supreme owner of the senses, Krishna. Serving Krishna with with purified senses is called Krishna consciousness. So right now we can say our senses are not purified, but at least we are getting, we are in the right path, and slowly, slowly they are getting purified. So that is the way of bringing the senses under full control. What is more, that is the highest perfection of yoga practice. So somehow the senses have to be brought under control, and before that, the mind. So mind is also considered a sixth sense. So the senses have to be controlled. Text 27. Prashantamanasam hyenam yoginam sukham uttamam upayati shanta rajasam brahma bhutam kalmasham. The yogi whose mind is fixed on me verily attains the highest perfection of transcendental happiness. He is beyond the mode of passion. He realizes his qualitative identity with the Supreme, and thus he is freed from all the reactions to past deeds. So, yogi, one whose mind is fixed upon me, Krishna says, attains the highest perfection of transcendental happiness. So, he is beyond the mode of passion. So, he is in the mode of goodness, or if it is not beyond even mode of goodness. And thus he is freed from all reactions to past deeds. So Brahmbhuta is a state of being free from material contamination and situated in the transcendental service of the Lord. One cannot remain in the quality of Brahman, the Absolute, until one's mind is fixed on the lotus feet of the Lord. To be always engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord or to remain in Krishna consciousness is to be factually liberated from the mode of passion and all material contamination. So by practicing yoga properly, one goes beyond the mode of passion and ignorance. But Prabhupada brings bhakti yoga here also because he knows the purpose of Krishna. Because toward last verse of this, or not the last verse. So the verse comes, no? Yogi nama api sarvesham madgatena antaratmana. After all the yogis, the best one is who is a devotee. So to be always engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord, or to remain in Krishna consciousness, is to be factually liberated from the mode of passion and all material contamination. Text 28. Yunjanevam sadatmanam yogi vigat kalmasha sukhen brahm sansparsham atyantam sukhamashrute. Thus the self-controlled yogi, constantly engaged in yoga practice, becomes free from all material contamination. and achieves the highest stage of perfect happiness in transcendental loving service to the Lord. So he becomes free from all. So even the yogis, the chapter is Dhyan Yoga, but the verse it says Yunjaneva Sadatvana Yogi Vigata Kalmashaha. So constantly engaged in yoga practice. Yoga means sada, Yunjan, Yunjan evam sada atmana. So he is always engaged in what? Yoga practice. And that's how he becomes freed from all material contamination. So even Bhakti Yogi, when he is engaged in the service of the Lord 24 hours a day, slowly he becomes free from all material contamination. The result will be there. The chanting is very powerful. Holy name will definitely do the Cheto Darpana Marjanam, whatever Mahaprabhu said. That was the first words. So it will definitely happen once we are engaged in the process of yoga. Self realization means knowing one's constitutional position in relation to the Supreme. The individual soul is part and parcel of the Supreme, and his position is to render transcendental service to the Lord. This transcendental contact with the Lord is called Brahm, uh, Brahm Sansparsha. So this transcendent contact. So one has to keep on practicing. So transcendental contact with the Supreme is the same as transcendental contact of His holy name. So when we chant, so we are already performing all these activities. Text 29. सर्वभूतस्थम आत्मानं सर्वभूतानि च आत्मनि ईक्षते योग युक्तात्मा सर्वत्र समदर्शनः. A true yogi observes me in all beings and also sees everything, every being in me. Indeed, the self-realized person sees me, the same Supreme Lord, everywhere. So that is one of the characteristics of the yogi. He sees Krishna, he sees the Supreme Lord everywhere. A Krishna conscious yogi is a perfect seer because he sees Krishna, the Supreme, situated in everyone's heart as Supersoul Paramatma. The Lord in his Paramatma feature is situated within both the heart of the dog and that of a Brahman. The perfect yogi knows that the Lord is eternally transcendental and is not materially affected by his presence in either a dog or a Brahman. So Paramatma is Paramatma, no matter which body he has to go inside. That is the supreme neutrality of the Lord. So he is completely neutral. It's unfavorable to everybody or anybody. The individual soul is also situated in the individual heart, but he is not present in all hearts. That is the distinction between individual soul and the super soul. One who is not factually in the practice of yoga cannot see so clearly. A Krishna conscious person can see Krishna in the heart of both the believer and the non-believer. So that is a Krishna conscious person. He can see presence of Krishna everywhere, and that is the topmost position of yoga also. Outwardly, every living being is situated in the energy of the Lord. The Lord has primarily two energies, spiritual and material. The living entity, or the part of the superior energy, is conditioned by the inferior energy, and the living entity is always in the Lord's energy. So sometimes, because we are called Tatastha Shakti, so we have independence to be in the material energy or the spiritual energy. So we can be either on the land or inside the water. It depends on us. The yogi sees equally because he sees that all living entities, although in different situations, according to the result of fruitive work, in all circumstances remain the servants of God. While in the material energy, the living entity serves the material senses, and while in the spiritual energy, he serves the Supreme Lord directly. In either case, the living entity is a servant of God. This vision of equality is perfect in a person in Krishna consciousness. So, although there are so many more verses to cover, I think I'll stop here. See anybody's any question or comments? I know everybody likes to hear the stories of Bhagavatam. Philosophy of Bhagavad Gita is not something very palatable, but this is important to to have our base properly situated. Otherwise, we'll become sentimental. Oh, beautiful stories of Bhagavatam, and still, when the stories of Chaitanya Charitamrita come, they are even more beautiful, more relishable. Everybody likes to hear those stories, but Bhagavatam philosophy is very important.
Yes, Prabhu. That's very true. Actually, we like to hear stories and relish them, but philosophy is very difficult.
And I can see today we have Guru Vandana Mataji also with us, although her mic is off.
Yeah, actually, she told me that she's not able to hear it. So I told her to disconnect and connect. I'm not
Mhm.
sure whether she's hearing anything. Probably she's watching you, and from lip movements, she's making up.
Yeah, her mic is not working. Anyway, any other question or comment?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. Yes, Archana.
Prabhuji, I wanted to ask you, while doing the chanting, after 3 or 4 rounds, I feel like singing a bhajan. I don't know. ये बहुत दिनों से हो रहा है, and unless until I sing a bhajan, then I can't. मतलब उससे पहले मेरे से continuation होता ही नहीं है. It's just I have to stop it. I have to stop the chanting in between, and then अकेले बैठ के and जोर जोर से I sing a bhajan, and then again I start. Is it okay to,
It's
you know?
okay.
Huh? Actually,
As long as you're doing in your home, it's okay. But just imagine in the temple if
I
everybody does
know.
that,
I
it'll be.
wanted, this was just like it's happening like काफी टाइम से हो रहा है ये, so I just ऐसा अब तो मुझे पूछना ही चाहिए that whether I'm doing the right thing or wrong, because after 4 rounds or 5 rounds suddenly it just
Well, that's why I said, at home it's okay. You can.
okay. Okay, thank you, Prabhuji. Just had a
You're
doubt.
welcome. So, what do you all say? Should we stop here or
Yeah,
continue?
we can continue for 10 more minutes, Prabhu. I think we have 10 minutes clean.
Hmm.
If there is no questions, we can continue.
Or should we ask Archana Mata to sing that bhajan here also?
Oh my God. That's too weird.
And that will go.
I think that mood has to be there. I
Hare
will
Krishna,
definitely.
Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna Moshe.
Mata, you wanted to ask.
Prabhuji, the chant which you, before starting the classes, you
Yes.
chant Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, the whole
Uh-huh.
chant. If you can explain the meaning of that chanting, it will be really great.
Um, well, it's a tradition that Prabhupada has introduced. Or before speaking of Bhagavatam, we chant this verse, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So basically, we are praying to Krishna to give us a strength, give us a capability to start speaking. And then we pray to Vyasadeva, Mother Saraswati, all the Vaishnavas, because without their mercy, any speaker cannot speak anything. Actually, we have no capabilities. It's only by the mercy of the higher ones we can say something. That's why we chant those verses.
Okay, Prabhuji. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mata.
Another one, Prabhuji, you used to sing that Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Deen Bandhu Jagatpate before starting the Bhagavad Gita.
Not me.
Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Deen Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesh Gopika Kant Radha Kant Namaste.
Well, that's a mantra for Krishna.
Acha, okay.
But well, there's a long set of verses, but I just chant two verses because we have a very short class.
Okay.
But anyway, that is to get beg for the mercy of Krishna, and afterward Tapta Kanchan Gaurapangi. That's for Srimati Radharani. Yeah, and then we chant for Panch Tattva mantra, then Vaishnavas also. So yes, that's a set of verses. They're all given in the beginning of Bhagavad Gita, in the introduction part. So all the verses are given. So basically we chant those verses before start. This is called Mangalacharan. Mangalacharan means we want all the auspiciousness. And because it's very auspicious to speak on Bhagavad Gita or Bhagavatam. Yes. And moreover, we need the blessings, we need the mercy of all the predecessor acharyas, the Guru Parampara, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and all the Panch Tattva, and then Krishna, Srimati Radharani, everybody, before we can even embark upon this journey of speaking of Bhagavatam.
Very true, Prabhuji.
Yeah. Otherwise, the knowledge can be taken away also.
Okay.
Just like it is said, Krishna, another name of Krishna is Hari. So Hari, it means because he has to remove all the obstacles from our path that stop us from making proper progress on the path of bhakti. So many times we become proud of our scholarship, of whatever, of knowledge, of beauty, of wealth, and that's a big obstacle, the pride. Because Krishna wants his devotees to be very humble. Where pride comes when I think or I start believing in I am capable. It's because of me I'm making progress. But the real understanding is it's because of mercy of Guru and Krishna that we're making the progress. And that pride when comes in, like in English there is a saying, no? Pride cometh before the fall. So a person falls down if he becomes too proud. So Krishna, what he does, now he wants to remove the obstacles. So pride is an obstacle. So if somebody is too proud of his scholarly achievements, then Krishna at the right moment, he will take away his scholarly capabilities. Because ultimately everything is in Krishna's hands. And he will let that person be humiliated, let that person be dejected, that he could not win the argument or he could not even speak properly. So the person has finally to take shelter of Krishna's feet to be able to speak even properly. So that's how Krishna plays. So even if somebody is a big scholar, he has to understand everything is coming from Krishna and Guru. So That's why we chant these verses. But basically, idea is also to chant these verses with full sincerity, not just a lip service. So then everything will come from the heart.
Okay, bro. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. So I guess now we can stop it. It's already only 3 minutes left. So you all have a wonderful weekend, and see you all tomorrow. Hare Krishna. Jai Shri Ram.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you,
Thanks a
Prabhuji.
lot.
Hare Krishna.
Krishna Prabhuji.